Okay, good morning and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 4th of September. Good morning, everyone. And first of all, I wish to receive apologies for absence. I know we're missing Callum Ringer, Lucy Shires, and Andrew Brown, all of whom are elsewhere this morning. I don't believe there are any other apologies. The second item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of June. Were there any questions on those minutes? Okay. Okay, well, I propose that they are accepted, seconded by Councillor Fredericks. And all of those in favour, please. Yeah, okay, thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, item 3 is public questions and statements. We're joined this morning, just make sure I've got your name correct, Councillor Copleston, is that correct, from Broadland Council? So you've helpfully sent something across to indicate you wish to speak to us this morning about Coltishall. The floor is yours if you wish to speak. Thank you.
Broadland Council made representations in response to your local plan back in 2021, and within that response the council identified additional growth in North Walsham with significantly increased traffic volume on the arterial routes to Norwich, particularly the B1150 in Coltishall. Following this, your council undertook a transport assessment in summer 21 which would address any potential impact on the road. Despite repeated requests to share the findings of the assessment, no information was forthcoming. Eventually, a technical note, which was of limited scope, was provided one day before North Norfolk began the Regulation 19 publication of the local plan. Although there was an opportunity to discuss and potentially resolve local concerns about the transport impacts of planned growth of North Walsham on the residents of Coltishall, the opportunity to resolve this important cross-border matter was missed, and local people did not get their say. At a second meeting last summer, following objections to the local plan on the adequacy of the transport evidence prepared, the County Council told North Norfolk District Council additional transport work was required. The promoter of the proposed housing sites at North Walsham engaged consultants AECOM to undertake a subsequent transport assessment, and our newly formed Coltishall and Halstead B1150 group submitted our local points of concern, which need to be addressed before traffic counts began last autumn. Notwithstanding our many points of concern, AECOM have only concentrated on increasing traffic flow through the villages as development in North Walsham starts. Their 2 recommendations for traffic mitigation in Coltishall were woefully inadequate. There are no mitigation measures to protect pedestrians and cyclists, nor have they addressed our main concern, the width constraint over the River Bure Bridge. Fundamental problems with cross-border communication have occurred throughout your local plan process, and I question the validity of the transport assessment to properly inform and justify a public consultation, which, if allowed to proceed, should include a face-to-face public meeting in Coltishall so local people finally have their say. We would also like a full copy of the transport assessment carried out, and we have put in a freedom of information request, which so far has not been replied to. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for coming to join us this morning, Councillor. Also, just to address the fact that the County Councillor for the division, Fran Wymark, did email me, I believe, yesterday, broadly saying similar to yourself and asking for more engagement with the local authority. Councillor Heinrich, I know you wanted to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll respond to my role as Chairman of the Development Committee in Councillor Brown's absence. Having had full sight of the AECOM materials and the full proposals, I do share some concerns, I have to say. However, we are about to begin consultation on the development brief, initially in North Walsham, and I understand you have been briefed to some extent on what is happening there. And we have agreed that officers will meet with representatives of the Highway Action Group at Coltishall. As I say, for clarity, the proposed consultation relates to the content of the draft development brief. It does not include necessarily the highway mitigation proposals that have been referenced. These mitigations, I'm informed by officers, are currently not yet sufficiently advanced for public consultation. So there's considerable work to go on yet. That said, the Highway Authority indicated that they do not see any showstoppers in terms of the ability to deliver the mitigations. Again, that's something you may wish to consult highways on. Clearly, there will be debate about whether the mitigations are sufficient. Once the highway works have been subject to final safety audit, and that is obviously critical, officers have recommended that we hold a public consultation and a public meeting in Coltishall as you've requested. And if we wish a formal proposal here, Chairman, I'm happy to do so. Ideally, officers wish this to happen prior to any endorsement of the development brief by ourselves. And in any case, it is recommended that we do not do that until the local plan examination is complete. Okay, so there'll be no decisions ahead of the local plan itself. So the recommendation from officers is that the highway proposal at Coltishall should be subject to a specific public consultation once they're sufficiently advanced to be published. And we would agree the nature of that consultation with Broadland District Council. I'm happy to propose that, Chairman, if you wish.
It's not a proposal on the agenda, obviously. If there is anything to come back, obviously it can be made as a recommendation from the working party. But notwithstanding that, obviously, we we're obviously, as you mentioned briefly, we've got the examination process, so it's possible, notwithstanding any public meeting, public consultation, some of those matters will also be dealt with there. But thank you. I think that's enough on the subject, and happy, obviously, to have a further dialogue, either with me or with my portfolio holder again in future. Thank you. There's a minute to reply. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, portfolio holder. I just wanted to say that we were given the extracts from your policy, planning policy working party, and a meeting at very short notice over a weekend was organised with myself and Fran Wymark, the county councillor, to discuss the recommendations. I feel that every time we try and approach you, we just don't seem to get anywhere. We really need to see the transport assessment. The B1150 group have done a freedom of information request, and we really need some sort of transparency because the people in Coltishall are very concerned. The road is overwhelmed with traffic at the moment, and the road problem will become exacerbated if your development is allowed to go ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Just to say initially in response, Councillor Heinrich isn't the portfolio holder. He chairs the development committee. Andrew, unfortunately, couldn't be here this morning due to another meeting. He is turning up a little later on, but I will inform him of your concerns. And as Councillor Heinrich said, it is the intention that there will be some ability for the general public of Coltishall to discuss these matters that are of concern to that locality. So yeah, I think that's hopefully covered it. I don't think, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, just simply to confirm that there will be full consultation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. Just to also welcome, we have a number of members of the public in the back of the room over there. Good morning. We have no public statements from you. I know you are interested in the last item on our agenda. Apologies, I cannot move that forward. As I think you're already aware, some of those matters need to be discussed in closed session due to the tenancies of the building. So you might not learn an awful lot this morning, but on the other hand, you're most welcome, and thank you for coming along, and the same for yourself. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Were there any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Member questions, if any, at this stage? No. Okay. There were no recommendations from overview and scrutiny, so we move to item 8 and the recommendation from Cabinet working parties and of course the Planning and Built Heritage working parties of the 10th of July and the 7th of August. Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, in the absence of Councillor Brown, these are all matters which were fully discussed and agreed at the working party. I have nothing really to add to any of them, and I propose that we take them en bloc. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Heinrich. Councillor Barley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it'd just be appropriate at this stage to just talk a little bit about the joint position statement for Knackerswood, which is one of the recommendations we will be taking forward or asked to take forward. I think it is wholly appropriate that this document, the joint position statement, is put into effect. Now, it is regrettable that there will be implications on the growth of this parish, but we as a planning authority do have a duty to ensure that planning does not have a detrimental impact on the natural environment. And we need to ensure that Anglian Water and the Environmental Agency are continuing to look into matters which will resolve this issue. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Barley, thank you very much. Councillor Bathwaite, and then I've got Councillor Dixon.
Just to say that the Knackerswood question was raised at the Broads Authority, where I am your outside representative, and the main point was that without adequate infrastructure, there cannot be building in this area, and that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add to what Councillor Copleston had mentioned in the public statement in relation to item 10, that's the North Walsham Development Brief Public Consultation, because at the last Planning Policy and Built Heritage meeting, I did raise that as a matter of some substantial concern, and the essence of the points that I raised was that I did not believe that the transport assessment and the mitigation measures that had been reported to the working party adequately reflected the concern that I was aware of from the people of Coltishall and Forstead. I have to say, of course, I don't represent that division. I made those comments wearing my county councillor hat for Houghton and Stalham division, but of course that's right up to the boundary there, and I was mindful that there were some other concerns felt by Tunstead and Scoil Ruston Parish Council, but the essence of the issue, I think, really was very much that the county council assessment, the traffic assessment and the mitigation measures were not in keeping with what I recognised as the key problems within those two villages and the implications of this. Having said that, I recognise that it's the responsibility of this council to obviously concentrate most of its efforts on the North Walsham area and indeed that development brief, the detail of that, and rely, of course, as it ought to be able to, on the county council assessment with regard to the principal route that feeds North Walsham. So it's within that context that I raised this, and I do believe that there is a need to strengthen the relationship and contact between Broadland District Council and North Norfolk District Council and with the County Council to adequately reflect at officer level the kind of issues which are undoubtedly going to be of great concern if they are not adequately resolved when this project makes progress. So I just say that because I think it needs to be said in public,
because often our minutes don't always adequately cover what we might say verbally. So and I think it chimes with what's already been spoken to you. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Dixon. Obviously, without wishing to repeat, some of the discussion we've already had, you're right to obviously highlight that, of course, it involves other local authorities as well, notably the county council, but nothing really further to add in terms of the further discussions and actions that will occur on this issue. But thank you for that. Was there anything further? Councillor Heinrich has proposed that the recommendations are accepted, seconded by Councillor Varley. And just have a vote of all of those in favour. Thank you. Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. Item 9 is delegated decisions, and obviously, a small number here. Nothing really further to add. Were there any questions from the floor on this item? If not, I'm happy to propose that we note the report. Okay, happy to note. Thank you. Item 10 is the budget monitoring for period 4. So as you heard earlier on, Councillor Lucy Shires is absent this morning. Unfortunately, she had to be at a funeral. As you can see, the first part of the recommendations details various capital projects, some of which concern projects already complete or certainly very much underway. As we're all aware, some higher costs in respect of certain service delivery and procurement, some lower property search fee revenue reflective, of course, of the economy, and of course some increased demands, some higher interest income, again obvious reasons for this, offset to a certain degree by the borrowing costs largely. Additional capital investment in some environmental health tools, the Catfield Industrial Estates emergent repairs, and the Albert Street public conveniences in Holt, which of course we'll come back to. I believe it's in the planning. It's in planning at the moment, which was of course damaged in a vehicle accident, and will present an opportunity to deliver the new changing places facility there. Additional grant income with the local authority housing fund, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and CTAP. So that's all very welcome. And of course, the council will work to address the very small forecast deficit in comparison to the overall size of the budget expected at the full year. But obviously note the current position of underspend. So I'm not uncomfortable with this as a budget monitoring observation really for this period. Were there any questions on this item? Councillor Cushing, yes, go ahead, and then Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions, if I may, please. You referred to the interest payments. If I go to page 30, this refers to the repayment of the COVID grants. Now, it was known that those grants had to be repaid to the government. So I suppose the question is why the money itself wasn't in, I suppose, an easy access account as opposed to somewhere where we needed to go and borrow money in order to pay it back. Because obviously that's cost us nearly £200,000 worth of interest.
Okay, a bit of a technical question there, Councillor Cushing, not something I know the full story on, I'm afraid to say. So are you able to help me? Thank you. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Excuse me. Yeah, we have got the money in our investments, but unfortunately the request for the repayment just came out of the blue. So ordinarily we would, if we'd had notice that you may have expected, then we would have been able to move it out of one of our accounts and put it into a readily available funding. But it just came within a few days' notice, so we weren't able to plan for that. We would, if we'd had sufficient notice, even just sort of like a month's notice, but it was very short notice, and the whole of the country experienced this, which made it more difficult to get access to some funding. And so we've, had to incur this cost. It is unexpected, but it is within our overall budget forecast for investment and borrowing. So we're still ahead of the game in terms of a significant amount of interest expected over and above what we've budgeted for at the start of the year.
Okay, fine. Fine. Can I ask another question, please? Different aspect. On page 29, it says employee costs. It says the 2020-23-24 pay award has not yet been approved. And I think an allowance has been made there for 585,000. Do you have an update on that? Are we still expecting it to be in that ballpark, or is there a risk it could be greater than that and additional funds have to be found?
We don't have an update on what the position is likely to be. That negotiations are still underway. We budgeted for 5%, and the discussions, I think, are slightly higher, in which case it would be more than that at the moment, but it will depend upon, the final agreement as to how much under or over we are on that. But it is an unavoidable cost that we will incur.
So that's based on 5%, is it the 585 figure?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Costing. Thank you, Mrs. Stankley. Go ahead, Councillor Dixon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 23, where the recommendations are, the 7 recommendations, can you tell me, were any of these included in the 23-24 budget forecast?
I'm just sort of trying to find the page at the moment. I'm on the without page numbers, sadly. So I'm struggling a bit with that. Yeah, so I've got a printout with the updated recommendations without the page numbers. So, sorry, you threw me there a second. Apologies, Councillor Dixon.
If it's any help, it's the front cover of the papers issued this morning.
Yeah, so you were asking, sorry.
Were any of those included in the 23-24 budget forecast?
Okay. Well, I would have thought so. Sorry, Mrs. Stankley, can you help me answer that question? Thank you.
They weren't actually due to, well, the first 2, there's the £50,000 is an additional urgent improvement works that we need to carry out on the Marham's footpath because of the deterioration there. And the second one is the Albert Street public conveniences, which were run into by a vehicle. So we've taken that opportunity with the insurance money that's available to fund that, to actually undertake some extensive refurbishment works there. So that one wasn't included, as that was the event had not occurred, I don't think, at the time. The other areas, recommendations 4 through to 7, they were discussions that were talked about or known about, but we hadn't actually included them within the capital programme. Full council had approved the schemes in principle, but we hadn't included the actual amounts within the capital programme, but they are all fully funded, and so will not be at cost to the council.
So broadly speaking, thank you for that. The unexpected was really the Marham's footpath works. We had expected, of course, in the longer term to do the Albert Street public conveniences, but inappropriate word, it was accelerated somewhat by that incident. Obviously, we had known about the rural prosperity fund and those other emerging issues and opportunities, I should say. So the local authority housing fund has been a matter of ongoing dialogue between the government and local authorities and among each other. So can I come to Mr. Blatch first of all, and then I'll go to Councillor.
So obviously the items 4 to 7 have been reported before, but the statutory officers, so myself, Mrs. Stankley and Ms. Jordan, have reviewed of all of our decisions, and whilst the receipt or the award of these funds to the council in the latter part of last year had been reported to the council, there hadn't been provision made within the capital programme. So to pick up on Mrs. Dankley's comments, they were fully funded, but they hadn't been accurately included within the capital programme. So this seeks to address that omission, if you like, but the actual funds are coming to the authority, were made known and have been reported in the period since last October. The Rural England and UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we received confirmation of our business plans for those in November and December. The Local Authority Housing Fund we were advised of on the 22nd of December last year, and we considered our ability to support the government with that initiative and agreed to do that in February of this year, and that was reported at that time. And the capital budget for the item 7 is the subject of a substantive report on today's agenda for the Cromer and Munsley schemes, but they've been in place for some time. But in terms of contract inflation and the fact that detailed scheme development has identified that those costs have risen, and they're subject to a further application for support from the Environment Agency as detailed in the substantive report on this agenda.
Okay, Councillor Fredericks.
Okay, thank you for that. If I might just respond, the context of that was that obviously during the course of the year, one does expect course corrections, but it was just the number and the magnitude, I suppose, really, that's a bit of a surprise in that regard. Although I think we were aware of as the Chief Executive said, we were aware of the topics, but the actual inclusion within the budget obviously hadn't taken place, and I didn't recognise those figures at the earlier point in the year. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you. And you've helpfully highlighted there is, of course, an updated list of the recommendations. First of all, which of course to note the contents of the report and the current budget monitoring position, but then recommend to full council that the new capital budget for £50,000 is added to the capital work programme to fund the repairs at the Marhams, which was the odd one out realistically. And number 3, the £370,000 budget added in respect of the public conveniences at Holt. Number 4, the 1.04 million pounds is added to the local authority housing fund, which we also just mentioned. Number 5, that the current provision of temporary accommodation budget is increased by 178,000 to 983,000 for 23-24, following receipt of the local authority housing fund grant. And the capital budget of 1.458 million is added to the capital programme for the Rural England Prosperity Funding. And finally, that a capital budget of 14.661 million is added to the capital programme as shown in paragraph 4.8 and note that the programme will be funded by external funding. So I'm happy to propose that they are accepted, subject to any further questions. Do you want me to read that fully? So so just for clarity, I've been requested that I read out recommendation 6, that a capital budget of 1.458 million be added to the capital programme for the Rural England Prosperity Fund expenditure, and 266,000 be added to the capital programme for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund expenditure as shown in paragraph 4.7, and note this will be funded by external funding. So just for clarity, sorry, a bit of paraphrasing there from me. But I propose that they are accepted, seconded by Councillor Fredericks, and all of those in favour, please. Thank you. Thank you. Item 11, again, delivering this on behalf of Councillor Shires. So this is the debt recovery report for 22-23. And I just wanted to really say that it's an appreciably very clean bill of health here, and continued hard work and success of this the revenues team within the council. So well done to for the staff for this record, really. I don't know if we don't have Sean here, sorry. No. But I don't know if there are any questions. Obviously, we've got the annual write-off report, which obviously will come to this meeting as standard, and to approve the suggested changes to the delegated authority in Appendix 2 for write-off. So was there anything? Sorry, there was a question from Councillor Dixon. You go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just draw your attention to page 67, table 2, and the bottom right-hand column, where the figure of 1,988 is that figure correct?
So I'm just scrolling through. Table
2, bottom right.
So that's provision for bad and doubtful debt for 22-23, £1,988. I'm not able to give you any technical answer. We don't have Sean Knight here. I don't know if there's anyone else that might be able to. Okay, so we'll get you a response, but yeah, I can't give you more detail at the moment. I'm fairly confident that would be right, but obviously I can see there's quite a disparity in those numbers there. So we'll obviously seek to address that, and it's worthy point for highlighting there. So thank you, Councillor Dixon.
It doesn't look right. Yeah,
I know there's a considerable difference there. As a provision, obviously it looks very good, doesn't it? So we'll just make sure there's not some digits missing there. Okay. Were there any other questions? Okay, so I recommend I propose that the recommendations to full council are approved to approve the annual report giving details of the council's write-offs in accordance with the council's debt write-off policy and performance in relation to revenues collection, and to approve the suggested changes to the delegated authority as shown in Appendix 2 for write-offs. Is that seconded? Councillor Withington, and all of those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Again. Sorry, bear with me. It is certainly easier with a paper printout, isn't it? Sometimes, particularly with a longer agenda. Of course, the next item is 13, and it's the North Norfolk Sustainable. 93. 93 on the electronic version. Do apologise. It's not the same 93, I'm afraid, Steve. Brilliant. Thank you. Sorry about this. course, it's item 12 is the Kramer Phase 2 and Munsley Coastal Management Schemes. Sorry for almost skipping that item. Councillor Blathwaite, do you want to introduce this? Thank you.
Yes, the papers are before us all. We are presented with three options. I suggest we go with the officer recommendation. We are dependent on a shortfall funding from the Environment Agency. I have in the chamber today, we have the lead officer on this project, Officer Pope, and she can answer any technical questions that anybody might have. And at this time, I will leave it at that. But unfortunately, there is a shortfall, and the scope of the project is dependent on that shortfall being funded by the Environment Agency. Thank you.
Okay. Well, just to say really, thank you for all of the ongoing work. I know it's been, a big scramble, obviously, to try and address the inflationary impact. So it's costed up quite a long time ago now, and things have changed quite dramatically. But it's recognised by us all, just how much has been put into this. So and of course, ongoing engagement with the community, and questions obviously rightly continue to emerge from our communities on what it's going to look like and what's being done and the timescales and such. And so really appreciate, of course, the engagement with everyone. Harry, you wanted to come back? Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, there will be further meetings with the communities involved, and we will try and time those meetings so they fully involve and give scope to people who traditionally might have difficulty in attending during the day. So we will be totally as open as possible. But as I say, the scope, until we actually know the scope, perhaps those meetings need to be held back until we can actually discuss the facts. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's recognised. Further questions, please? Councillor Viley, yes, you did indicate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's more of a statement rather than a question. I just want to thank officers for fully engaging in this matter and the report before us today. This is a fundamental issue, and we need to ensure these works do go ahead to protect these special communities. I think it is important to note at this point that these works will have implications on the carbon footprint, but it is encouraging in the report under section 8 that there will be carbon calculations being undertaken, and this will ensure a benchmark and ensuring that future works will hopefully decrease that. And that's really important that we have those measures in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Viley. Councillor Fredericks, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Blathwaite, for that reassurance on communication with the communities that are involved. I know that the people in Munsley are really concerned about the sea defence work and how that's going to impact them, but they also recognise and welcome the fact that these sea defences are absolutely needed, and the focus is on Munsley, which is the best place in the world, actually. So I just thank you for that, and thank you for the reassurance. And again, with the officers, they've been really great. And it's liaising with me as well. And this is down to inflation. We couldn't guess that inflation would give us such a huge shortfall. So I am grateful for the work of the Environment Agency and our teams. that are negotiating this, and I do hope and pray that will come forward with money. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly stark, isn't it, when you can, just that passage of time, and obviously inflation really wasn't the issue when this was initially drafted. So it's certainly changed. Councillor Bathwaite has made the recommendations, and it's recommended that Cabinet resolves to confirm its continued support for the approach being taken in the delivery of the Munsley and Cramer Phase 2 coastal management schemes, and the Cabinet recommends that if approves an increase to the value of the Cramer and Munsley coastal protection schemes from the £14.1 million secured, but only 6.476 million within the approved capital programme, to £25 million within the capital programme, subject to the additional £10.5 million from the Environment Agency as per applications dated August 23. And 3, delegates authority to the Director of Place and Climate Change in consultation with the coastal portfolio to approve quotations, tenders, access agreements, and contractual appointments variations as the scheme moved to the construction phase, and 4, approves increases in the delegated financial authority for the Director of Place and Climate Change up to £1 million, for the Assistant Director of Place and Climate Change up to £500,000, and for the Project Manager up to £100,000 for these two schemes, only subject to condition that there is agreement with the coastal portfolio holder and the finance and assets portfolio holder, and signed delegation form completed. And finally, if the full funding request for an additional £10.5 million from the Environment Agency is not secured, agrees that the schemes be rescoped to reflect smaller scheme values. So obviously we would have to reassess, potentially do things over a longer period of time, because they will be necessary in the longer term anyway. But it would be how that is done and over what timescales potentially to the longer term. Those recommendations have been made. I'm happy to second them, and presuming there's no other speakers, can we take a vote for those in favour, please? Thank you. Okay, that's unanimous. Item 13 is the North Norfolk Sustainable Communities Fund Annual Report. It's been a record of continued success for the Sustainable Communities Fund, supporting numerous localities with many projects across the districts, town and villages. And the projects supported have certainly been as diverse as they've been numerous. So I certainly wanted to thank staff who administer this programme, and to all of the councillors, of course, who contribute to making the recommendations, which I then actually consider. And I do find the work that they do to be particularly well considered, demonstrating a great deal of careful thought on how we use that public funding and how it should be allocated fairly. And of course, this administration hopes to continue to ensure grant funding remains available for communities, initiatives, renewals, and of course, some of the many services, valuable services that are provided on a voluntary basis, contributed to by this funding. However, ongoing funding, as we've addressed here, will need to be identified for this particular grant to continue in the long term, notwithstanding the possibility, of course, that other grants emerge that might be beneficial to North Norfolk. But as you see detailed here, a further report will need to come back. Sonia Shooter, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say further to that. No, but thank you ever so much for the report. It's comprehensive and I think covers the issues. Councillor Varley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to thank all the officers and councillors on the panel who are involved with this fund. It's a fantastic fund, and I'm always telling my local community groups and parish councils about the Sustainable Communities Fund. And there's been so many benefited projects that have come out from this fund. And it's so important that this focuses also on the green credentials, and this will aid our authority, but most importantly, the district as it continues in the right direction in the green journey. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Very right to highlight those points. With Councillor Fredericks, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you to the officers involved and also the councillors on the team there. We do have quite a number of places in North Norfolk that haven't come forward with applications or haven't been granted applications. So I would encourage all parish councillors, district councillors, to talk to their parishes about the fund, because that is open to every organisation in North Norfolk. And also the community connectors and social prescribers are doing a great job of going into the communities and talking about these funds as well. So please let your parishes know that that's still available. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. Of course, that's something we can all take away. Of course, it's varies year to year. You look at that map of where they've been approved, it looks slightly different. Some obviously parish councils frequently apply to the fund and successfully deliver a project and may not come back for something else for some years, but I think it's it's been a reliable go-to fund for many community groups in our district for some time under this and the previous guys, if you like, and certainly wanted to give it that appraisal today, and just to recognise the work that staff here are doing to realise that full benefit, really. Obviously, we do need to approve that a review occurs, and that is the recommendation, that we receive the report and note the contribution that the North Norfolk Sustainable Community Fund makes on council priorities in respect to the quality of life and climate, coast and environment, and to approve a review of the North Norfolk Sustainable Communities Fund to ensure the achievements of the focus identified in the corporate plan for 23 to 27. Were there any other points? If not, I'm happy to make that recommendation. Okay, seconded by Councillor Varley, and I presume all in favour. Thank you. And thank you again, Sonia. And thank you both. Item 14 is the Cedars North Walsham completion of refurbishment update. So again, delivering this item in the absence of Councillor Shires. Well, I mean, it's wonderful. The building is now being completed, of course, and there's a bigger context here in terms of the work carried out elsewhere across the town, both completed and ongoing. Of course, we've had the Cheryl Hub, the work in the town centre, contributing to many very successful events. Subsequently, the work on the Lokes ongoing and then to start. In terms of the Cedars, we now have a number of options ahead to secure the uses for the building, and we have a number of leases agreed in principle. If the discussion on these is required by the committee today, obviously the usual rules apply. We have to take such discussion to closed session, but I'm hoping that might not be required. But of course, it will be guided by the committee. But bear in mind, we've got another item between this and that part of the agenda as planned. So we are, of course, as well, very pleased with the standards of the work that have been carried out here. And I know there's an open day. Is it Wednesday, Thursday, I believe. And I know there's a very positive future ahead. So thank you both, the staff and also the community that have contributed to the project. Renata Garfield, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say further to that.
Thank you. The report also includes in the exempt appendix some lettings that have been negotiated by officers. We have some vacant space remaining and we continue to market that. So the report also asks Cabinet to confirm their support for those lettings. And that a further report will come back to Cabinet regarding the remaining areas around the Cedars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So time for any discussion before I propose those recommendations. Were there any questions, please? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just clarify on page 118 where it speaks of the links to corporate key documents. The mention of the medium-term financial strategy there, it makes a statement which it says that it will generate a rental income. Can I just clarify whether, taking into account the expenditure budgets that will obviously be linked to this, whether there will be a net surplus to support the medium-term financial strategy? Emphasis there on net.
So obviously that does somewhat hinge on the considerations on the leases, of course, doesn't it? So, and those decisions haven't yet been made, but ideally, certainly, yes, we would be in that position of net gain, of course, over a number of years. So it's quite hard to sort of say, give that commitment until those decisions have been made, but it was always obviously the intention to refurbish the building and bring it back into a position where it was delivering both for the community and, of course, delivering a revenue. Of course, there were grant funding, for the entirety of the North Walsham Heritage Action Zone project from Historic England, and there are some certain restrictions, it's fair to say, on what can be done with the building in respect of that. But it's quite hard to sort of say exactly, because there will be some decisions in future to make. I don't know if anyone has anything further to add to that. No,
I'm not after an exact figure.
Yeah,
I'm just after will there be a net a contribution to the MTFS? So I would be quite content to know that your projected figures show a positive rather than a negative in that regard. So that's all I'm after.
well, the rate of return will obviously be over years. It's and it won't obviously deliver a net immediately. It's got to deliver that revenue from the rental. So I don't know if you've got anything further to add to that, Renata.
So depending on the outcome of the remaining areas of the site, then they could cover the capital expenditure of the Cedars, and the rental income then would be revenue income to the council, and any repairs and maintenance would be covered through a service charge. So that would be funded by the tenants. So there would be a net position then in terms of rental income, and depending on the remaining parts of the site, any capital spent on the property then would be effectively paid back. Thank you.
Okay, I wonder, Mr. Chairman, whether we might have an update on that at some time when the position is somewhat clearer, so that we have an idea of when that might be and what the magnitude might be.
Okay, well, obviously the next part subject to the agreement here will be that further item coming back to discuss those tenancies. And certainly we can have that discussion again in the future. Okay. Councillor Fishing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually going to fish in the same territory, actually, because it states the report that the refurbishment is complete, yet it infers elsewhere that there's more work to be done on the site. So I'm assuming if you look on the page 133, it talks about a ground floor external office. I
So
won't read out what it says in it because that's really part of the confidential papers, but if you read that, you can see it infers that there's more to be done. So I just wondered whether
are
that's.
you familiar with the site, Christopher? Have you been there before?
No, that's why I'm asking
Well,
the question.
come along on Thursday, join me. So the building, somewhat separate from the rest of the site, if you like. We've got another sort of somewhat troublesome wall around the side of the building, and there's an outbuilding which there'll need to be a decision made on its future uses, and a sort of parking compound area. So there's, I suppose, the possibility of some other placemaking, revenue return type projects, and some, potential listed building obligations which aren't absolutely clear just yet. So the building itself, though, is complete and looks delightful, very well done. But there are issues to deal with around the building, if you like.
Yes, that's why I understood the report. So I just want to clarify on that.
Yeah. Okay. So the recommendations were that Cabinet notes the completion of refurbishment works to the Cedars building as part of North Walsham Heritage Action Zones programme, confirms the letting of rooms within the Cedars building is detailed in the exempt appendix, with authority delegated the asset strategy manager to complete the license agreements with details of tenants made public once licenses are complete. And 3, requests that the asset strategy manager continues to advertise and seek tenants for the remaining space within the building, with delegated authority to agree tenants in consultation with the finance and assets portfolio holder. And 4, receives a further report detailing options for the balance of the Cedars site and adjoining land off Ball Lane to the north, once the outcome of the Historic England statutory list review is known. So they were the points that I was referring to in the answer to Christopher there. Presume there are no further questions. I'm happy to propose that they are accepted, seconded by Councillor Heinrich, and all of those in favour, please. Okay, thank you, and thank you for the various questions. That's helpful. Item 15, here a bit faster than I thought we were, so it's been beneficial to you. So the Rocket House building, Cromer. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Thank you for travelling to us. The Rocket House building, Cromer, repairs, maintenance, and energy improvement works. Again, Councillor Shires isn't here to deliver this report. There's only so much we can discuss in public here due to the existence of live tenants and obvious commercial sensitivities, as I covered much earlier on in the meeting. However, the building is suffering presumably extensive corrosion to steel frame and damp, the extent to which isn't, I suppose, particularly obvious to the untrained eye at the moment, and the extent to which cannot yet fully be determined due to certain inaccessible elements, etc. It's deteriorated faster than it should have done, and as you can see, we have considered legal options in respect of claims against the principal building contractors. However, we are now beyond the timescales within which we could have taken such action. Regardless, the principal building contractor no longer exists in the same way it did then. So that's obviously a very challenging position, but that is the reality. There are a number of other issues we also need to resolve to meet net zero objectives, EPC rating obligations, and general items where things are beyond serviceability. One of which, of course, is the lift or elevator, which is of particular importance, contributing to the sustainability of assets on the promenade, ensuring the accessibility to visitors and local residents. It's obviously of historical and cultural importance that the RNLI Museum continues, but regardless, we don't have, a specific council responsibility in that respect. The other tenant has been extremely successful and has become a visitor destination in their own right, supporting employment and of course contributing to the offer for visitors locally and from further afield. Clearly, we need to continue to explore external funding options to realise the preferred goals here, though these will obviously need to be considered alongside the other options as you see detailed. So just a reminder, we're not going to be able to discuss specifics in terms of the tenancies here, and we probably are best to move into private session relatively soon. But Renato, I don't know if there's anything further you wish to add at this stage. No, but thank you again for providing the report. Were there questions before we moved into that session? Okay. Sure. I just also again want to just apologise to the members of the public. Thank you for coming to join us today. What we essentially do now is to pass a resolution to close the meeting to members of the public. Appreciate your level of concern and of course what you do contributing to the heritage of the town in your work, volunteering at the museum. So thank you for your obvious interest and concern. There will be news on this sooner than later. Thank you. Okay, I need to pass the following resolution that under section 100A of the Local Government Act, press and public be excluded from the meeting for the items of business on the grounds that they involve likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 5, part 1A of the Schedule 12A as amended to the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosure for the following reasons, and that is in respect of item 15. I make that proposal. Is that seconded? Okay, that's seconded by Councillor Heinrich. Okay. And can we have a vote in favour, please? Thank you. That's unanimous.